So the Washington Commanders just surprisingly traded away a former first-round wide receiver to the Eagles today, and that leaves their wide receiver room noticeably without valuable playmakers outside of Terry McLaurin. Well, what if I told you that it's very possible they could actually be trying to land a major weapon for their offense? They have over $37 million in cap space, and in this video, I'll give several more reasons why this could be happening. But first, I've got to talk about a cornerback in Atlanta getting a huge bag of gold coins right after. All right, first up, Falcons cornerback AJ Terrell got paid today, with Ian Rappaport reporting that Atlanta and Terrell agreed on a 4-year extension worth $81 million with $65.8 million fully guaranteed. That makes him the second highest paid cornerback in NFL history and puts him right behind Packers corner Jair Alexander, who's making $21 million per year, and just ahead of Denzel Ward, Jalen Ramsey, and Marlon Humphrey in terms of annual salary. Then, for what it's worth, this is also the biggest amount of guaranteed money in league history for a cornerback on a 4-year deal. The Falcons have definitely not been afraid to give their guys guaranteed money. On top of this, they added a league-high $144 million of guaranteed money to their roster via free agency this year, with $100 of that going to Kirk Cousins, then $3.4 million through the draft, and now even more with Terrell's new deal. Terrell becomes one of the latest corners to get a bag this offseason, with Tyson Campbell, L'Jarius Sneed, and Jalen Johnson all securing big money 4-year deals. Broncos corner Pat Surtain, PS2, is probably next in line as he's eligible for a new deal in Denver. Then next year, Texans corner Derek Stingley and Trent McDuffie become eligible and will likely get a nice payday themselves. Next up, in a very surprising move that might be the news of the day, is the Washington Commanders trading wide receiver Jahan Dotson along with a 5th-round pick to the Eagles for a 3rd-round pick and 2 7ths. This trade is a bit of a shocker for multiple reasons. First, Dotson was the 16th overall pick just 2 years ago in 2022, and second, the Commanders traded him to a division rival, which you don't really see all that often. Look, Dotson hasn't quite lived up to the hype so far in his first 2 seasons. He only had 84 catches for 1,041 yards and 11 touchdowns while working primarily as the number 2 option behind Terry McLaurin. But to give up this quickly, just after 2 years on a 1st-round pick, is certainly not normal. According to Cameron Wolfe, who spent some time at Commanders training camp last week, Dotson had a rough camp, and Commanders new coach Dan Quinn said he was waiting for someone to emerge as the team's number 2 receiver, even mentioning Olamide Zaccheaus and Dyami Brown ahead of Dotson. Jahan himself even spoke about needing to get his confidence back, and now he's going to go search for it in Philly. I'll talk about why this makes perfect sense for the Eagles here in a second, but another reason why this is a bit of an eyebrow raiser for the Commanders is the fact that, yeah, like Dan Quinn alluded to, they don't really have any receivers on their roster that are established aside from Terry McLaurin. Their receiving core was already thin even with Dotson, and now that he's gone, you're relying on the aforementioned Brown and Zaccheaus, and beyond that, there's 5th-round pick Luke McCaffrey, 30-year-old Byron Pringle, and 31-year-old Jamison Crowder. That certainly isn't doing rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels any huge favors. I mean, look at what the Bears have done for Caleb Williams, for example. They've surrounded him with talent, bringing in Keenan Allen, drafting Rome Odunze on top of already having DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. But the Commanders are giving Jayden Daniels a JV squad, or what appears to be a JV squad full of unproven receivers. But with the wide receiver room for Washington being so thin, what if that means they could have a potential trade in place, or hoping a potential trade happens? I mean, this is purely speculation on my part, but what if they emerge as a Brandon Aiyuk destination? After all, Jayden Daniels and Brandon Aiyuk were former teammates in Arizona State, and back in June, Aiyuk posted a TikTok of the 2 of them FaceTiming, with Aiyuk telling Jayden that the 49ers don't want him back.
They said they don't want me back. I swear.
On top of that, Adam Schefter appeared on NFL Live a couple months ago and said that the 49ers and Commanders had conversations at one point regarding a trade, but Washington decided not to do a deal. So that was on the Commanders. Well, maybe after Dan Quinn got a look at his receivers during camp, they had a change of heart and are now positioning themselves to make a deal after all. Again, speculation on my part. As of now, there haven't been any new reports that would suggest this, but it does have some potential grounds for something to happen here. Plus, Pretty Ricky just tweeted out today that despite the 49ers' most recent offer of $30 million per year, Brandon Aiyuk has not been at the team facility in days. He's still pushing for the Steelers to end up with him, but the Commanders could in theory make a very late appearance here. After all, if I'm Aiyuk and not wanting, for whatever reason, to remain with the 49ers and chase a Super Bowl ring, I would much rather prefer the Commanders based on who their QB is over the Steelers. Both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields have been a joke so far in preseason, and I don't know why you'd want to go over there unless it was just purely for money and maybe your love of Mike Tomlin. Now, let's move over to the Eagles and the trade for them. The Dotson trade makes plenty of sense here. Like I said earlier, they gave up a 3rd and 2 7th-rounders for Dotson and a 5th, but they had 2 3rd-round picks and 4 7th-rounders. Rappaport stated that the 3rd-rounder they gave up was the better of the 2, but the 2 7th-rounders were the 3rd and 4th of them, so later in that round, which means they didn't really give up all that much, and in return, they got what is presumed to be their 3rd receiver behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. He's also still on his rookie deal, only carrying a cap hit of $1.5 million this year and $2.7 million next year, with the ability for the team to pick up his 5th-year option if they want to do so. Philly is definitely seeming like they're going all in, adding even more to an already stacked offense that features Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and one of the best tackle duos in the league with Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. And with that, the Eagles are a pretty dangerous team in the NFC to watch for once again. They were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, fell short last year after completely imploding, but might be on the rise again this year. But what do you guys make of all this? Do you think the Commanders could be positioning themselves for an Aiyuk trade, or are they simply trading away a guy that they weren't high on anyway and want all the pressure here on Scary Terry? Next up, in some quick hitter news around the league, let's start by bouncing back to the Commanders for a second, because trading away Jahan Dotson wasn't the only trade they made today. Earlier this morning, they traded a conditional 7th-round pick to the Browns for kicker Cade York. And here's the kicker. After that trade, the Commanders released Riley Patterson, who signed with the team back in June. So there you go, some special teams moves for Washington. Now, another trade that was made today, and this one is a bit of a thriller. The Seahawks traded cornerback Michael Jackson to the Panthers in exchange for rookie linebacker Michael Barrett. Yes, you heard that right, Michael Jackson, obviously not the king of pop unless maybe he's known for hard tackles or he drinks a lot of soda, is on his way to Carolina. He's entering his 6th year in the league, with his best year coming in 2022 when he started all 17 games and finished with 75 tackles and 1 INT. As for Michael Barrett, he was a 7th-round pick out of Michigan in last year's draft and now finds himself out in Seattle. Next up, the Giants and Jets held a joint practice yesterday in a little New York battle, and when Sauce Gardner was asked about what it was like going up against Daniel Jones, he had a pretty hilarious response.
He's a good quarterback. You feel me? Man. I had fun out there today, you know. I don't really know what to say.
I mean, that was a little crazy. And after this video made the rounds on social media, Sauce himself took to Twitter saying, "I said he's a good quarterback. I just got a little distracted with something mid-interview. Chill." Now, to quote the famous Ron Burgundy, "Sauce, I don't believe you. We all know Danny Dumps is as mid as it gets, and there's no shame in admitting that." Another clip that surfaced from that practice was Jets rookie running back Braelon Allen trucking this Giants defender into next February. I mean, can't really blame the defender here, considering Braelon Allen is 6'1" and 235 pounds, basically built like a linebacker. Next up, we got some good news and some bad news here. Some good news is for Lions fans, and that is that Penei Sewell, the all-pro tackle who rolled his ankle during practice yesterday and got an MRI, appears to be fine. If all he did was roll his ankle, it's likely a low-level sprain, and he should be good to go for week 1, which is some big news there for the Lions. Then the bad news is for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's not just because they have 0 Super Bowl rings. Cincy is reportedly expecting defensive end Myles Murphy to miss about 4 to 6 weeks with a knee sprain, per sources of Jeremy Fowler. The team will be conservative with the 2023 first-round pick to make sure he's a full go upon return, and this is a tough loss for the Bengals, who are going to be leaning more heavily on Myles as it was this season after Cam Sample was placed on IR due to tearing his Achilles early on in training camp. So now we shall see how the D-line holds up as they await his return. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.